Well, one of the topics that's come into conversation quite a bit this campaign season, there's been accusations of extreme voter fraud.
It's our duty to ensure that elections are fair, beyond reproach, accurately reflecting the will of the people. And that's what voter ID is all about.
When the group True the Vote checked the numbers, they couldn't believe just how rampant the fraud really was.
Most Republicans insist it's all about preventing voter fraud.
There are huge fears of voter fraud in the presidential election tonight.
The North Carolina Republican Party is the latest to fire a company under investigation on charges of voter fraud.
You might think voter fraud is a massive problem given all the attention it's getting this year.
We said in South Carolina that if you have to show a picture ID to buy Sudafed, if you have to show a picture ID to set foot on an airplane, then you should have to show picture ID to protect the one of the most valuable, most central, sacred rights and blessed with in America, the right to vote.
Well, many of these claims have proven to be virtually non-existent. It turns out there has been some voter fraud. It hasn't been rampant, but it also hasn't been by sneaky liberals voting multiple times or by undocumented immigrants illegally registering to vote. The latest case involves this man, 23-year-old Colin Small, charged with tossing completed registration forms into a trash bin in Harrisonburg, Virginia. But instead of appearing before a grand jury, prosecutors decided they wanted to wait a little longer to get some more information from him. So they found out Small was actually working for a longtime GOP operative, Nathan Spruill, who ran Strategic Allied Consulting, the firm where Small was working. And it turns out that Spruill, who had $3 million in contracts from the Republican Party before they were forced to cut ties with him, was allegedly registering dead people, altering and faking registrations of others, and encouraging this behavior of throwing out registrations of people who said they were Democrats. So all these things Republicans have been alleging they've actually been doing, at least in the case of this firm, Strategic Allied Consulting, now under serious criminal investigation. Much of their work registering voters took place in Colorado, Nevada, Virginia, and Florida, all expected to be very close contests. Much of this has been unfolding over the last month or so, but we want to talk about some of the latest aspects of this case with Corbin Carson, a journalist with News 21. And Corbin, I took a look at your website, votingrights.news21.com, and right on the first page, you say the exhaustive search finds very little voter fraud. How exhaustive was your search, and what exactly did you find?
Well, as part of News 21's investigation into voting rights this year, we wanted to add hard data to the highly partisan debate about voter fraud, whether it is affecting elections and if the new voter ID laws could be stopped by the fraud we found. So over the course of our 8-month investigation, we send out thousands of public records requests to secretaries of state, all the attorney generals, and in some cases, we had to go county by county. And as you know, there's over 3,000 counties in the United States. And what we found was, over the course of 12 years, was 10 cases of voter impersonation, which is the only type of fraud that can be potentially stopped by the new voter ID laws.
You said 10 cases?
That's correct, 10 cases.
Put this in like a perspective.
Well, with 146 million votes cast during that time, that would represent 1 in about 15 million votes.
Wow.
So it's
and this is a huge problem in our country, according to quite a few people. Let's talk, Corbin, about this case we just spoke of in the introduction, registration cards being dumped. How big of a crime is this?
Well, one of the other things that we noticed, other than that voter impersonation was small, was we did realize that there was a terminology problem, that a lot of crimes that were happening in elections were being termed voter fraud. So what we did with all the data that we had coming in was we separated the cases into different categories, one of which is registration fraud. And what we found was registration and absentee ballot fraud made up just under 40% of the cases that were reported to us.
Talk a little bit about the irony here that this case, a conservative group, and yet it's conservative groups, you know, they were doing what they were accusing others of doing.
Well, News 21 is a nonpartisan organization, so I wouldn't presume to suggest what the data actually means. What we wanted to do was just add the hard data to the discussion so that the different, I guess you could call them pundits on either side, could argue it out on their own.
What about some of the other tactics? I mean, I don't know to what extent this figured into your research. A barrage of voter ID laws or new laws. Basically, a lot of these did get overturned by the courts, but a lot of these laws in states like Texas and Pennsylvania, some of them affected people who had served time in prison. They had served their time, they had gotten out of prison, got jobs, they were tax-paying citizens. Talk a little bit about all of these tactics and how they might figure into this election.
Well, you know, our entire investigation was a wide range of voting rights with News 21. So we did have investigations into disenfranchisement, into felon voting, and that sort of thing. But I encourage your viewers to look on our website, go through our data. Not only did we put the results of the data up there, we also included every report that we received from every state. Every case is on there, over 5,000 documents. You can look in your state, in your area, and see exactly what kind of voter fraud was reported by your local officials. But to answer your question, again, I wouldn't presume to add any tactics one way or the other. We just really felt that hard data was needed for this discussion.
What were some of the things, Corbin, that surprised you the most in this research?
Well, from speaking with election officials and election experts, one of the things that we heard a lot over the course of this eight-month investigation was that the election system itself is broken. Every single county handles their election their own particular way. So one of the common threads that we heard from people we talked to was that maybe some sort of uniformity or some sort of standard could be applied to make the election system run a little more efficiently.
Yeah, that is really interesting. I mean, so what do you suggest then? I mean, what do you think people should take from this data that you've gathered?
What should people take from the data gathered? Again, after doing so many interviews, it's I hesitate to add any opinion one way or the other. The data is what it is. We found 10 cases of voter impersonation fraud. We did see a little bit more issues with the absentee ballot and registration in the beginning of the election cycle. We're just trying to help out the election process from where we stand.
How did you guys come up with this project? I mean, what was sort of the impetus behind it?
Well, each year, News 21, which is funded by the Carnegie and Knight Corporations, each year they pick one investigative topic to do an in-depth investigation on. This year it was voting rights. And as you know, working in the media, we don't normally get a lot of time to turn a story. And so to have the luxury of 8 months and, a wide team of investigators. We had 24 journalism students. We're a student organization from the best journalism schools from around the country that helped out these different projects. It was really wonderful to be able to work and go so far in depth in this situation. And our project has been widely accepted by the media. It's been in the New York Times and Huffington Post, et cetera.
Well, no matter what, I know you guys are nonpartisan, but no matter what, this has been a hugely significant issue during this election season and a very important project that you guys worked on. Corbin Carson, journalist at News 21 in Arizona. Thanks so much.
Thank you, ma'am.